All right, hi everybody. For those who don't know, I'm Tom Brown, superintendent here at Monty Tech, and I want to welcome you on behalf of all our staff, all our communities. It's very exciting to have this opportunity to come together and have this conversation. Really appreciated that Representative Trahan and her staff had reached out and asked us to host. But also just because I don't think there are enough opportunities. I mean, a lot of these folks, the only communications I really get to have all the time consistently is on snow days when we're trying to figure out what to do and what's happening over there. No, it's no snow here, that kind of thing. So it's great that we actually get to come together and have this conversation. The only piece, because I think we, obviously, with things that we get from MASS, and we all kind of hear the same information. But I'm sure you're going through the same thing I'm going through, where I'm literally having paraprofessionals stop me in the hallway and say, Tom, am I going to have a job? And when that happens, that's a scary thing. So I think we have to have these conversations and see what we can share. But I do remember, and I'm 90% that came from Mary Burke, who sent us an email when this first kind of started in January on behalf of MASS. And I think the message that she was basically saying was, don't panic, take a deep breath. I mean, we as leaders all need to have clear minds and think about how are we going to address this? How are we going to support the folks? Because I know many of you I've worked with directly, and I know how brilliant you are, and I'm going to learn from you about what we can do and everything else. I hope that we can walk away. I do have to do one other piece, because as I look out ahead of this, always make sure. Helping put this together, I really want to thank Julie Marinock, who is my assistant, Katie Whitaker, who's our development coordinator, and behind her is Leanne Scales, who is the chair of our foundation. So I just want to make sure we thank them for what they did to support this. And besides that, I hope you just have a great conversation, and if you need anything, just let us know. So there you go. Well, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Superintendent Brown.
I should say that Lauren came out when I first became superintendent and walked around, and it's I'm sure you've all experienced it. Sometimes you walk someone around and they stop and they talk to the kids and they ask questions, and you're like, that's a really dumb question. Why are they asking a kid? The most genuine tour that I've ever had of someone who really cared about the kids, really cared about the teachers. She has a vocational background, so I will say preferentially that we really appreciated that as well. But it kind of shows that when you set something up like this, it's because you really want to address the issue. So I thank you for that, and hope we have a good conversation.
Thank you, Tom. I know we will. I can tell you've set us up for success, and I really appreciate you hosting us. It's great to be back at Monty Tech. And my husband, who went to Greater Lowell Technical School, we often argue openly in front of our 5 kids about which was the better path. And I think we're both examples of what you can achieve when all paths are open to you. I really wish that we were here under different circumstances. I know that we've been planning for this moment, but it's hard to sort of imagine underneath the flurry of so many executive actions that this administration has taken, whether it's getting rid of diversity initiatives, cutting our federal workforce, freezing billions of dollars in funding, that we would go after the department, that the administration would go after the Department of Education when so much of what we do in Washington is setting up future generations, setting up our young people for success, especially as we talk about global competitiveness and what it's going to take to educate the next generation of Americans. Republicans in Congress and DOGE, which I know is now becoming a household name, they've really started an all-out attack on many of our departments, many of the programs that so many of our families and your students rely on. We had a roundtable similar to this one a few weeks ago that was focused on food assistance programs because those cuts are likely to be in this budget reconciliation bill that they are putting through onto the floor in a couple of weeks. And what really became clear is, of course, the food assistance that we send to our food banks is in jeopardy, but the ripple effects with all the partners that our food banks supply food or pantries or markets to really hit our school districts, whether it's our community colleges or our middle and high schools. Those pantries really help feed our families. And so these discussions are important because one, it's helpful for all of us to get on the same page in terms of the consequences and the impact of those cuts. It's also really helpful to me when I go back to Washington to elevate the very real stories that are happening back home in terms of the effects of these cuts. As you know, and as you've probably already read the executive order from last night, the Trump administration's plan to dismantle the Department of Education will not only have immediate, far-reaching, but enduring consequences across the country. I'm happy that I have experts like you, because I know that you're going to quickly break that down for me in ways that even I, don't or haven't thought of. I've got an excellent representation of people who are in education around this table, so it's really for us to just exchange ideas. Certainly for me, I look forward to learning from all of you. I know that municipal budgets are tight right now. In so many of the communities that I represent, communities are requiring Prop 2.5 tax overrides to meet the needs of their schools. We have technical and vocational schools, community colleges that offer alternative opportunities for local workforce development, which has become increasingly popular for students. But that increased enrollment also means tighter budgets as well. So I think everyone in this room, anyway, can agree that we need more investment in education, certainly not less. So I want to hear about your concerns. I think maybe we start by just going around the room. I'll start with Jim here to my left, and you can maybe introduce yourself, but combine that with sort of the thing that is most on your mind as you think about these cuts, and then certainly we'll open it up to like a free-flowing discussion. Thank you.
I get to go first.
Yes, Jim, I should have warned you.
No, that's okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for welcoming us to this meeting. I think it's important not only for the K-12 folks in the community colleges in the region, but to be able to hear and to be able to share. So thank you for that. I'm the president at Mount Wachusett Community College. I've been there now just past 8 years. And I think that there are certain things that I'm less concerned about, only because I have it in my mind that there should be bipartisan support for a lot of the things that we do, things like Pell, things like TRIO, elements that impact community colleges and K-12 as a result of every single legislator, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, has these institutions and these districts in their district, in their home areas. So my common sense frame tells me that some of those programs would be less at risk. What is a big concern for me are the ongoing and future grant opportunities that have really given us an opportunity to serve our students. And of course, I'm concerned deeply about jobs and the folks who fill those roles. But at the same level, I'm concerned about our ability to serve our students with funding that I get a sense may not be there moving forward.
Thank you.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for being here. My name is Varric Oy. I'm the Director of External Affairs, President, Assistant President. Couldn't be here today, but we got our team here, Joanne and Colleen, we'll be talking a little bit as well. But as you said, President Hogan, we're very concerned about Pell. We're hopeful and optimistic, given that it's a bipartisan topic, but just for us alone, that's a very significant impact. That's $10 million worth of direct student aid, student support. And as you said, the grant program is another significant impact. If we lose those grants, it will definitely reverse the progress that we've made over the years in terms of retention, persistence, and graduation rate. I'm also as you know, the director of the Anna Peasy grant.
Yeah.
And it's a $1.7 million grant for every year, and this is our second cycle of the grant. And we've been able to provide a holistic support to our students in terms of social, cultural, academic advising, financial support, financial aid support, in terms of guidance. And so the federal grant program is extremely important because we've been able to utilize those funding to help our student success, and we've been able to increase our retention rate by 80% having that program just within the AAPI community alone.
Yeah.
And we've been able to increase enrollment, the fact that we have a program like Anna Peasy at Middlesex Community College. And so in terms of year to year, we've been able to increase enrollment by 15%. So it's significant. So the grant program is hugely important for us, and that will continue to be something that we're worried about.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanne from Middlesex Community College. I am the director of one of the TRIO Student Support Services programs. There's two at Middlesex, one which is mine, that's the traditional one, so we serve first generation students that are income eligible, and the second one serves students primarily that have documented disabilities. This is the last year that we're in our of the 5-year grant, so our current grant ends August 31st. We have submitted grant applications for the new grant, and with what's happening right now, it's really nerve-wracking to think that we wouldn't get this grant. Both of our grants combined, one is 1.9 million for 5 years, and the other is 1.4. We serve around 300 students. Our students, like I said, are underrepresented, and we're able to really break family barriers. We're not just talking about one student, we're talking about entire families, that when you break that barrier and allow one person to go to school, their siblings are coming, they're bringing in their cousins, they're bringing in, their nieces, their nephews. It really is a generational barrier that we are tearing down with our advisors and our staff. We were lucky that we had a student last year. She's accepted and is currently at Harvard University from Middlesex Community College. She was a non-traditional student. She came in on our Mass Reconnect dollars. So this is the work that we're doing, and usually at this time of year, I'm thinking about preparing for the new grant, but unfortunately we're thinking about, well, what happens if we don't get it, and how do we break it down, and who gets our resources, and where are our students going? What other programs at Middlesex will our students be able to be served by? Our staff is obviously worried about their jobs, but President from Mount Wachusett said, it's not about our staff, it's really about the long-term impact on education. And we all know that higher education gets you out of these low socioeconomic situations that the residents of Massachusetts can be in Lowell, in Worcester, in Fitchburg. So these TRIO programs are so important.
They are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, Congresswoman Trahan. I'm Colleen Wynn. I oversee the pre-collegiate TRIO programs for Middlesex Community College. I oversee 3 middle schools in Lowell and Lowell High School. Annually, we serve over 1,500 students. I've been the director now for 24 years, and I'm a mama bear for my programs. And I absolutely love them. I'm very concerned. They're $9 million grants for the life of the grant. So I have 3 TRIO, which is TRIO Up and Bound, TRIO Talent Search, TRIO Up and Bound Math and Science, and GERA. I'm concerned about more so the students. Yes, the jobs are precarious and it is a concern, but I actually provided a report for President Sisson, Congresswoman. I will give you a report, and I can always provide it electronically as well. So just briefly, I mean, I have student testimonials that actually made me cry. There's too many to read, but really just to highlight some, it was like, it's a lifeline. It's critical. Without these, I don't know where I would be. I mean, students go to Harvard, Georgetown, Rivier, Middlesex Community College, the gamut of everywhere. And the services that my team provide are amazing, and I'm proud of them. So I'm more concerned long-term. I do think TRIO programs are, I know they have bipartisan support. I've been through this, but not like this. You know, in other administrations where they just wanted to do their own kind of student service programs. Again, my huge concern is for our students. I'm a first-generation college student. I shared with you, I'm a Llewellyn. I was born and raised here. My ancestors came from Ireland in 1860 with just the clothes on their back. And I feel like the work that I'm doing is providential, that I'm there to be able to do what I was able to. I have a doctorate, and my father had an 8th grade education. And I hope he's
That's
looking
what,
down at me.
that's what we can achieve, and we're at our best.
And if I can do that for my students, I get emotional, so I'm going to finish there.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Julie Nash, and I'm the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs at UMass Lowell. And we have our partners here at MCC. We're the #1 transfer diet in the state, so very proud of that, and great to see you guys. And, you know, obviously a lot of what I have to talk about is very similar to what my colleagues in higher ed are talking about. You know, we have, thanks to your support, we've received a lot of funding for supporting our Riverhawk Scholars Academy, which is a first-generation college student program, which has been very, very successful in helping these students graduate actually at higher graduation rates than our kind of the normal student population, which is really kind of a miracle. We're also an Annapese school, so we have a very robust Center for Asian American Excellence, where the students have really found a home there. Students from all backgrounds are really, it's a very enriching place for them, and it's been very supportive. And we just recently received a grant with Northern Essex Community College in Framingham State to support low faculty developing OER textbooks, so open educational resources for their students for courses that are sort of like major gen ed courses that everybody has to take, and this would be significant savings for students at all of these schools. So we're excited about all these things we're working on, and we really just hope we can keep working on them. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm Steve Meyer. I'm the superintendent of Clinton Public Schools. I think as a K-12 district, pre-K to 12, there's going to be a lot to unpack as far as what does this mean, indirectly. I think probably the most direct concern that you look at is when you look at entitlement grants. You got to get Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, IDEA, the 240, 262. We spend about 91% of our grants on salary. Of our special education instructional assistants, about 40% of them are funded through our IDEA grant. And those are things that we're already facing budget challenges. The healthcare has been very unkind to us this year, so we're already making cuts. If there were additional cuts to those grants, obviously that's just going to layer on to those. So I think it's there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and I think that's the biggest fear right now is just not knowing what you can. Normally I think in a normal year you might have a sense of whether are those grants going to go stay the same, be a little bit cut. Now you have no idea, right? And there's a trickle down of that too. Like I have reading specialists in a Title I grant that are veteran teachers that if yes, there's supplemental services, but if those go away, that's probably 2 teachers I lose in a reduction in force to cover that salary, So we've got to kind of, navigate that. And like I said, I know that's in the grand scheme of things, that's probably a small part. It's just a very direct part for us. And I think, bigger picture, it'll be sort of how some of the oversight stuff get transferred, and also what else at the federal level is going to impact the state and their ability to continue to fund things like the Student Opportunity Act, which we benefit from. And if it gets to a point where the state's making decisions at a state level between healthcare and education, what's that going to do for school funding? So
That's right.
I'm sure plenty of people add on. So.
Thank you.
Kirk Downing, Superintendent, Neshoba Regional School District. Thank you, Congresswoman, for having us again. Next time, please, can I go before Steve Meyer? Because he hit a lot of the points that I was going to get, particularly around the ground funding of the federal government. As a superintendent, we look, particularly in Massachusetts, as we are very much a local-based decision-making model, as opposed to what you see in many systems out west and in the Midwest. And so we're looking to gather every dollar we can to help bring the educational programs to our schools. So it's the uncertainty of what is happening that's driving a lot of fear into districts right now, fear into employees. That's not a healthy environment where you're teaching young people to be thinkers, creators, innovators. And so my biggest concern is around having some clarity around what it is that's going to happen, so we can even make a plan.
That's right. The uncertainty, across the board, even beyond education, the uncertainty of execution on tariff policy is roiling our markets. We've got national security concerns with the uncertainty of how but here, it is true, it really cuts to the bone pretty quickly when you're thinking how am I going to plan for the expiration of my TRIO funding? Am I going to have reading specialists in our room? It's too hard. And I know how much you pack into a summer to get ready for the academic year, and this just adds a layer of complication and anxiety onto that. So,
well, we're already dealing with issues in Massachusetts around escalating costs of transportation and non-salary special education costs that impact our budgets in a way that are frankly unprecedented. And so now, coupling this at the federal level creates even more uncertainty, and so towns are getting tighter. And they're watching their budgets closer. Of my three towns, Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe, I know our town of Bolton is pushing forward with a nearly $2 million override this year. Lancaster haven't done that just a couple years back. That we had to make a cut of 20 positions in our school district just this year. And so the forecast down the road, I'm also telling people, I don't know what's coming in the next year, because the forecast is telling us that things are going to get tighter. Not to mention the rising cost of healthcare is another major factor. So when all those factors are employed, the grant money we receive that offset those cuts has even more impact on our budgets, because it's being eaten up by these other non-salary mandates that we have.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, Mark Allison, Superintendent of Winchester Public Schools. Again, thank you for hosting this event today. I think being able to give you direct feedback is crucial in terms of what we're facing as school district leaders. I was struck, I guess, when I saw the executive order come down for a lot of reasons. I think first and primarily the idea that, and the direct quote from the president saying that because the system clearly isn't working. Coming from someone who never attended public schools himself, he was a product of the New York elite independent school system, and so were his children. So I wonder if he's ever stepped foot in a public school. I grew up in public schools. I started my school career in the Barnum School in Lowell, right? Graduated from Drake High School. I got a doctorate from the same university that Donald Trump went to, ironically. So clearly the system worked for some people. Right?
Great point.
Thank you. And so, and then he goes on to try to further his point by saying, because we spend so much money and our test scores are so low. Okay, so we spend money, right? There's a direct correlation, according to the OECD, between GDP and educational spending. Straight line. We trail only two other nations in the world in terms of the return on investment for education, right? Luxembourg being number one, and number two is Finland, right? Other than that, we're doing pretty well. Ireland, ironically, spent a lot of money. They don't have the GDP yet, but if you go to Dublin, Dublin is booming, right? So it's coming. Now, what's left out of that conversation, though, is why, I guess, first and foremost, is that it goes on to say that, we spend so much money on education. When you actually look at K-12 spending, we only spend 3.4% of our GDP on K-12 education. The OECD average is 3.5%. So we're just about at the average. There are many countries that spend far above that. So that's a very misleading statement to try to put out into the media. Where's the bulk of our spending? It's actually in higher ed. Okay, so college is expensive. That's a driver for sure. The cost of US colleges, which is massively subsidized around the world, coupled with the fact that we just have an enormous country with an enormous amount of people that go to college, right? So you multiply a high cost by a high number of people, that's simple math, right? So some of these, statements that, we just put out there so casually are just, flat out wrong in their face, right? Now, moving beyond that, how does this affect us as public schools? I think the impacts are myriad. You've heard some of them. I think for us locally in Massachusetts and in small rural districts in Massachusetts, it's primarily through grant money, right? Title I, IDEA, which is ironic that today is also World Autism Awareness Day. And so there's a degree of cruelty here that's also, I wish I could say unprecedented, but it's not unprecedented. So that definitely hurts us. When we look at the Title I funding, that's the money that goes to support reading and math for our most at-risk students, right? And the IDA money goes to serve our special education population, who's also some of our most fragile students in schools. Not to mention that we also, and in the executive order, it mentions the need to get rid of indoctrination and diversity, equity, inclusion, amongst other politically charged rhetoric. I just left, before I came here, from Mount Wachusett, who's hosting a Handle with Care conference today that's actually exploring the impact of, or what our most marginalized students, our LGBTQ students in particular, and our low-income students face in schools in terms of bullying, low feelings of success, lower academic achievements, higher rates of suicidal ideation. All of these are direct outputs that our kids deal with every day when we try to say that this indoctrination is something that's harming our kids. In fact, I could say that nothing could be further from the truth in my lived experience. And I've been in a number of places. I've been in Massachusetts, I've been in inner city Philadelphia, I've been around. And I can tell you that what we're facing is a challenge that will have huge impacts. Personally, I'm married to a reading specialist. It's gonna hit my home. So that half of the people that are laid off at the education department federally, that's only part of the story. There will be a trickle-down effect in all of our communities.
And the entire regional office in Boston. Everyone's been let go.
Right.
So, just in terms of enforcement standards, those folks who are overseeing Massachusetts are all gone.
And these impacts are huge for the Northeast in particular, from Maine to New Jersey, actually Delaware, who have local control districts, right? We're not Broward County, Florida. We're not Montgomery County, Maryland, where you can consolidate some of these things at scale and do some different things. We're tiny districts that rely heavily on this money. What we could potentially lose from the feds is going to amount to maybe 5% of my budget, right? That's huge.
Sure.
And we're already scraping to make cuts, as you mentioned before, about 2.5. So these impacts are very real, and they are something that to just arbitrarily push your Coke button and then sign off this executive order is ludicrous. It's dangerous. It's irresponsible. I hope that the Democrats can, try to push back against this. I know that you're fighting an uphill battle, but this is an unprecedented move, and I think that the ramifications for us will be devastating.
Thanks.
Good morning. Todd Stewart, Superintendent of Schools, Ashburnham, Westminster Regional. Obviously, at this point in our roundtable, a lot of the points have been made. I think I would simply add that the framing of this, particularly in the news cycles, has been wrong. And the framing that I've largely heard is returning power to the states. And first of all, in the world of education, particularly K-12 education, that's just wrong. We have the most decentralized education system in the world, right? Our standards are set at the state level. Our curriculum is set at the state level. Our educator preparation and licensure is set at the state level. Education already belongs to the states. And so I think just from sort of how can you be helpful to us, Congresswoman, I'm not hearing in the news cycles, wait a minute, folks, that's where education already lies. So the Department of Ed, at least from my seat, is not a micromanaging organization. It's not a one-size-fits-all education. But if you listen to every one of my colleagues thus far, what it is it's a safeguard for our most vulnerable kids. Who do the feds support? Title I is our low-income kids. IDEA is our kids with disabilities. That's what the federal Department of Ed does. It doesn't micromanage my curriculum. It has nothing to do with the curriculum that kids are learning in Ashburnham, in North Central Mass. It doesn't determine the standards for the educator that's in front of your kids. The state is already doing all of those things, and so the dismantling for the idea of giving power back to the states, I would humbly ask, what power do the states not yet have? The department is a safeguard. It's a safeguard clearly at higher ed and at K-12 for our most vulnerable kids.
Thank you, that was great.
Mark Pellegrino, superintendent in Gardner, proud UMass Lowell alum. Actually, University of Lowell alum. I was the last graduating class a long time ago.
Said different than Mark's old.
I can't really add too much to this conversation. A big portion of this, the direct and immediate concerns, are definitely about the money. Like Steve was talking about, we have about 90% of our funds are funding positions to support the schools. I don't understand the logic. I agree, Todd, that this is a framing situation where the rhetoric is, schools aren't working. Well, if the car's not going, taking away the wheels isn't going to help the car go better. So I don't understand, taking away the money. Now, I do understand it's going to different, supposedly Title I's going to possibly going to different departments and under different things. I'm concerned about that because if we don't have educational experts running the show on where the money needs to go and supporting our most vulnerable populations, that concerns me long term. So I think the dismantling of the department has much more embedded impact than they're talking about. So immediate concern is absolutely the money. My people are in fear right now for their jobs. I'm in fear for supporting my kids. I'd have to, if I lost Title I funds, I'd be laying off $750,000 worth of teachers that are in the classrooms. That to me is the immediate impact, but I think there are much longer term impacts.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, John Lavoie, Superintendent at Grand Line Technical School. Thank you for being here today. It's great to see you.
Thank you for taking the drive out.
It's good to see a Congresswoman out here really concerned about education and being able to go back to Washington and support our needs. So it's really refreshing. For us, we have a very vulnerable population. 80% of our students come from the city of Lawrence, which are, say, 75% of those students are low-income, underprivileged students, and we get a lot of title grants, Title I through IV. We also have IEDA grants and Perkins grants for the vocational school. So all of those grants provide for services that are things that reduce our student ratio in our classrooms. It provides wraparound support services for our students, including mental health issues that we have. Summer programs, our after-school programs. These are programs that our students desperately need. I think the impact is not only on the students themselves, but our community, because our students are many of them going out to work when they graduate, because that's what we prepare them for. And so they will be, if we cannot provide the kind of services that will change their lives, they'll be less successful. I believe they'll be less successful going out into the world. And that doesn't help our communities at all. I always say that for many of our students, a technical education is is life-changing for them.
Sure is.
Because they're coming from an environment that's so different, and we're giving them the opportunities to provide a livable wage for them, which makes your community stronger. It allows them to be more productive citizens. It just strengthens not only the community, the present community in which they live in, but our state in general. Provides for a much stronger and higher quality living for the students that we graduate. So it has a huge impact, specifically because of the types of students that we have in our school, and can change the environment within our own school when we don't provide those wraparound services. So the work that you do is so important. One of the questions I always, I always kind of struggle with is and frustrates me is like, what impact can I have to change this with regards to the decisions that the president makes? It feels like it's hopeless and that there's nothing you really can do, but depend on our legislators like yourself to make a difference. And so I've never paid attention to CNN as much as I do today, trying to find out what's going on in Washington right now, because you never realized in your life how important decisions the president makes, as you're finding out now, and how that changes us in our lives, in our kids' lives in the future. And so I'm not sure if at your level you talk about how you can get a message to the people, the citizens, of what we can do to try to help the work that you're trying to do.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, look, the next 3 weeks are going to be tough weeks in DC. It's not as though we didn't know this was coming. Project 2025 was a pretty detailed document where the Department of Education and the dismantling of the Department of Education was put right on paper. And make no mistake, right, this has actually been part of, a strategy to take savings from centralized Department of Education and use that to pay for vouchers for, private schools or whatnot to states. I think what's lost in all of that is, the incredible success of public schools. Now, granted, we're sitting in Massachusetts, home to the very first public school, and also home to the #1 public school system in the country. But if anything, we should be making that contagious across the rest of the country in terms of how we do things and how we educate our next generation. You don't get there by making these cuts. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's so true. We've talked a little bit about how this is bipartisan, things like Pell Grants and TRIO funding and all of the, Title I funding in particular, because it hits rural districts, it hits urban districts. I mean, districts across our country all benefit. But Congress is being bypassed right now. The hardest part of this first 2 months of this Congress, of this administration, is that what we saw with USAID, of course, it's illegal and it's been stopped in court to just gut or dismantle an agency or programs that Congress has authorized and appropriated funds to. But what we saw with USAID, they didn't get rid of USAID, they moved it, gave it, from its own home to under the State Department's jurisdiction, and they just cut it way down. Now, that is also, we've got legal standing there, but you could imagine that same journey happening for the Department of Education, right? Because it is illegal for them to take the Department of Education, which we chartered and started and fund as Congress. And I think that's the part that's hardest about what's happening in Washington right now is, my Republican colleagues and many of them whom I work with on many things, mental health education, bringing that into schools, for example, are kind of abdicating this responsibility to Elon Musk and Donald Trump, who sort of view their job as having this mandate to just shrink down the size of government. And I will say, because the only time that this has been done successfully was under a Democratic president, right? It was in my lifetime and all of yours, I think, where President Clinton, right, embarked on, doing a national review, interagency review of all of our departments, but it was like very precise. It was, it wasn't just this cudgel to, departments. And we were able to decrease our federal workforce by, I think it was like 425,000 people. We did, streamline programs. We actually had a surplus for, definitely the only time in my lifetime. So there's a right and wrong way to do this. I think for us, when we are having that debate in Congress, I want to be able to point to the stories that you all surfaced today so that I am being as compelling and making it so self-evident for folks across the country, because we're not just fighting for Massachusetts here, we're fighting for school districts in Montgomery, Alabama, and districts that have really benefited from the Office of Civil Rights and these federal standards that we've put in place. So thank you for your contribution to that. I think the technical school is very different from the community college aspect, different than our state universities and our school districts, large and small. So I just definitely interrupted the flow of going around the table, so we'll get back to it. I apologize.
Brenda Richardson, I'm assistant superintendent at Greater Lawrence, so I can really just echo what everybody else in the room here is saying, like, yes to everything. I especially appreciate the point about, how the Department of Education really impacts those most vulnerable students, right? Your special education students and, low income. We just see that every day. Cuts that we would have to make to student support services, school social workers, psychologists, the reading specialists that we just hired. When we looked at our data this year, I think it was about 80% of students came in reading below grade level. It's a huge number. It's not a small number of students. So, I think, just keeping the focus on those most vulnerable students. And then, when you come into a technical school, we're, I guess, what you would call one of those 3 shift schools. We have our regular day students, we have after dark, and then adult education, workforce development.
I've seen it.
And, to walk down and to see, these adult learners to getting these opportunities that are, really changing the trajectory of their lives.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to think that might be taken away, and it will have a big impact on everybody, on the community. It's not just about the individuals, it's about the whole community. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Good morning, Lori. Ernie Houle, Superintendent Director at Aspet Valley. I want to first echo Tom's comment about your interest and sincere ability to want to know what's happening in our school districts, colleges. I remember when you first got elected and you were on your way to Washington, you had put a Twitter out that you were happy to be serving, and I had said, congrats, I hope we can get you to tour Assabet. And within that first week, you were at Assabet. So that's...
I love an invitation.
Yeah, that's... well, that's voice in action, right? That you're going to take the steps necessary on a job that you took. I think my issue, and that I'll share, obviously folks have shared information. My thinking is that decisions are being made without clear, logical thought process, right, of what the impact of cutting these programs will be. Similar to our colleges and universities, the regional vocational system is a 9 through 14 system where we also receive Pell Grants to help support our workforce development folks that are unemployed, underemployed adults that potentially have life-changing educational system, whether it's practical nursing or cosmetology or electricians or as part of the career tech initiatives that has been in the state. Those are things that I think will have larger impacts on, that's a family impact, right? That's beyond, obviously, our most vulnerable populations, which are our students, but that's now impacting potentially their parents as well. That may be in the same school district at the same time as the child. So Pell Grants, I think, obviously with IDA, Title I, Title IV, we received those monies too. It's about $1 million plus shortfall for Assabet. The other piece too is with beyond the educational grants is the additional things that are going to cost school districts money, and that's the additional tariffs, whether it's on consumables that we're purchasing in order to help support our kids from the technologies and things of that nature that they need. But it's also in not only in the vocational side. I do not have a school building project currently, but I have colleagues. There's 11 career and technical schools that are either in the pipeline or will be in the pipeline through MSBA, as well as our comprehensive colleagues that are going to be affected by the 25% to 200% tariff on steel. Even though it's manufactured in Pennsylvania, they may have to cross the border to Canada for some fabrication. And it's on the way back, in which it will, cause, building projects. And it's different for, I think, regional schools, as we have a number of member communities that vote on a set budget and a plan, and then to have to come back and to either ask for the money or to have to cut out of a model that was built to provide state-of-the-art educational delivery systems, whether it's on the comprehensive side or vocational, would be detrimental to making America great again, right? If they're trying to bring manufacturing and all that stuff back to the country, not only in the vocational schools, but eventually even in the comprehensive academic world, those folks are all going to be employed at some point in time. And do you want them to stay in America, or do you want them to go somewhere else? So it's actually, it seems like it's it's a backwards thought process that you'd think you'd want to invest more money in education.
That's right.
And I happen to sit on a national board, a couple of national boards, and we talked about local control and the state having the ability to consider what our curriculum is here in Massachusetts. What I can share is we have a pretty robust and forward-thinking educational system, and it's not the same across the country. There are colleagues of mine that do not have teacher prep programs, and that there's no teacher licensure required, and that there's no college required for those folks to teach, and yet they are teaching, the youth of America. So I think there's a standard that could probably be, launched nationwide. In Massachusetts, we like to be the innovators, right? So I think we'll continue to do that. But thank you, and I will thank you as well, as I was in Washington on Monday and Tuesday this week, and I met with one of your staffers. So I appreciate the time, again, just to share, besides today, hearing local voice.
Yes. Those trips to Washington really do matter. So thank you. I know many of you have gone down to lobby and just emphasize the importance of so many of these programs, which is why I know so much about them. I mean, some of them, I was able to use as a first-time graduate myself and my family, but certainly it's, when you hear the stories of how just impactful they've been to students in all your institutions, it's like, it's fight worth fighting. So, all right, Tom, bring us home.
No pressure. Jim, I want to switch seats. I think, a lot has been said. I do think I bring in a perspective in the sense that Monty Tech has 18 cities and towns. And the majority of those towns during this month and a half or so, we're going to do finance meetings, as in Gardner this morning, Winchendon last week, Sterling last week, Phillipston and Templeton this week. And much like you're doing here, when you sit down with the local folks, you really realize how bad it is.
Yeah.
And you really understand these towns are truly struggling. And I would dare anyone from the executive department to get on a plane, fly down here and sit down and try to find someone who's wasting money.
Right.
There's not a single person at this table who's throwing money around and doing nothing with it. And I can't use words that I want to use, but for them to say those kind of things that, Mark, throughout the ways they define us, that, it's waste and fraud and everything else. Good luck trying to find that. Yeah. We're all struggling and we're all trying to get by. One thing I want to make sure that I address was, a lot of us talked about that we have salaries that go with this federal money that's tied into it. Monty Tech, 7 of our 12 paraprofessionals are all IDA funded. We all know that if it's a grant like ARPA that's going to come and go, you don't put salaries on that because now you're going to own it. This money has always been there.
Yeah.
IDA has always been there. There's no shame on us for putting salaries on that grant because it's always been there for the 46 years. The department has been around and even prior to that. The fact that somebody feels that they can just pull that rug out without taking a moment to think about how, and I don't want to hear about, well, we're going to put the money in another department. You're slashing everybody at all those other departments too, so who's going to figure out how to dole that money out there? I really appreciate that Ernie brought up in terms of Pell Grants at the vocational level. We have an amazing LPN program. We were graduating, 20 kids or so now, and now we're getting classes of 50 kids because there's the money that's out there to support these students and attend these programs. If you go into the healthcare centers, they are begging for people to come in.
Yeah.
So even at a secondary school level, in a district, we're supporting and training those folks to do that kind of work. You take that money away, those kids can't access that. It's just a reality of it. And I just think there's a disconnect between what they saw in Project 2025 that they're going to jam down everybody's throats and not sit down and actually talk to people.
Right.
And again, that's why I appreciate so much that you have this kind of thing, because we all want to find solutions to problems that we think are coming.
Yeah.
We don't even know necessarily what's coming because all we know is they signed something saying that it's going away. I appreciate so much that you pointed out that it does take congressional action to make this go away. I urge and I hope all your colleagues understand that. I hope the colleagues on the other side of the aisle understand that. And I know that's something that's very difficult. But I can guarantee you that each one of them has districts and district leaders like ourselves who are struggling and saying, I'm not wasting money. In fact, I need a whole lot more money to get by.
Right.
So I think I just kind of what I started with is we need our federal leaders to come out and see what's happening and understand that and realize that sometimes there's good things that happen. I mean, yes, are there problems that happens in schools? Absolutely. We're not perfect, we do our best, but to simply pull the rug out from everybody's feet and say, good luck to you, that just can't happen.
Right.
So.
Right. No, I appreciate all of that. I mean, the fraud, waste, and abuse is getting overused. I think in the last 8 weeks. I mean, there's no one who wants to modernize government more than me. I mean, if you spend on an annual basis looking at our budget, and that a department of true government efficiency is a smart thing to get behind. But you're right in that if you spend any time in a city or town just at the municipal level and you see the really hard trade-offs that are debated in public view at a town meeting or at a city council meeting, you know that this is really not the place where you're going to save billions of dollars, right? I mean, I remember, Jim, right after I got elected, you hosted me, and we had something similar to this around what more could we be doing in terms of investing in education. We talked about increased Perkins funding. We talked about even having, more developmental skills to get people more ready for the workforce, how tethered our community colleges and our school districts and our technical schools are with local employers so that they can really meet the needs of, the local economy. And, I was so hopeful in that meeting that yes, this is a place where we need to invest. And in many cases with the CHIPS and Science Act, it's absolutely what we decided to do. The in science part is a huge shot in the arm for STEM education in this country, where we know we're going to have so much opportunity in terms of jobs that we attract and retain in our country, and specifically here in Massachusetts. And so now to just feel this rollback and the uncertainty, I think, is the hardest part to plan for, to your point. But also, when you put an agency, you trim it, down so much that you can't recognize it anymore. You house it somewhere else. we know what that actually translates into. Those are cuts, right? Those are cuts so that no one really notices or sees them. They're not debated on the floor of Congress where they should be, so everyone knows where folks stand on these types of investments. And so you all have talked about some very specific things in terms of who's going to get hurt. Well, our most vulnerable, certainly. And at a time when, I read the same report. Well, I probably don't read the same reports you do. You probably read many, many more. But the learning loss that we're going through, the more assistance that we need to provide in classrooms because mental health has hit, crisis proportions. I think about those 504 plans, those IEP plans. I mean, that's just going to, how do you deal with that? I think what's helpful to me is what happens if that money goes away? Like, what do you actually do in your school? Like, that would be helpful to just hear, like the consequence of that for you, in a detailed way. Anyone can jump in and then.
I can give a real quick perspective from the community college. I can remember within the time frame of my career, and I'm not proud of this, but there was a period of time where if I had found out about individual students at the community college who were struggling with transportation, and that was the reason they withdrew and did not complete, I wouldn't overtly, but I would have thought, well, we are not in the transportation business. Our goal is to educate the students so they can join the workforce. And unfortunately, at this time, it didn't work out for that student. The reality, though, is that when we provide resources for colleges and universities to be able to work more closely with local transportation boards, provide funding for transportation, to provide short-term loans so students can be able, or short-term grants for students to be able to take care of their transportation needs, childcare, food, housing, all of those things. I think that we have clearly demonstrated success in graduation rates of students where now I don't say that isn't our job.
Yeah.
And if those supports go away, we are right back to square one where I am required, or not required, but I'm going to be in a position of saying we cannot help these students graduate.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go there.
No, we don't want you to.
Master of the obvious with that last line, but that's where we would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for us, if Title I funding or some other type of funding went away, what that means is our classes are typically anywhere from 20 kids to 30 kids. Mm-hmm. So that means that the support staff would go first, right? Because we need a teacher in front of the room. So the support staff goes. So when you have 25 to 30 students, and the expectations of the superintendent, of my community, is that we're doing a great job educating our students. Well, when you only have that one person in the room, and you have more students with high needs, not to mention, compounded with the fact that we're still reeling from the COVID and the learning loss, and we're trying to catch kids up, and we're trying to do all those things. Taking a professional educator out of the room has direct consequences for all of those students who need those specialized services. They might not have an IEP, or they might not be identified as a student with special needs, but many of my students are traumatized. Just going through COVID, they were traumatized, but they're traumatized and they need more support. And secondly, we haven't, all of us are student-centric, so I think a lot of us talked about our most, marginalized population, our most needy population, but the other traumatized population is teachers. Mm-hmm. And right now we have a shortage of teachers, and we have a teacher quality title grant that if that doesn't continue, how do we support our teachers with professional development? All we're going to see is a greater lack of people who are going into education. I mean, we already have people who are looking at all the things that are going on, and they don't want to go into education in the first place. Right. And frankly, I don't blame them with all that's going on. So this is just going to make the teacher shortage even more glaring and harder for us to get people who are well-trained and then supporting them when they're there. So if I lost that extra educator in the room, now I have the one teacher who's going to need support because now they're changing the way that they have to support those students. They're going to have to do more or they're going to have to do a lot of things differently. That teacher quality grant is extremely important. And I think I didn't hear that yesterday when I heard that some grants are farmed out to other places. And that was one of my concerns, is that teacher quality grant might just go away because it doesn't align with what the administration thinks is important. And I think our Title I grant, we have a lot of people who would advocate for that. And I know there are a lot of groups that would advocate for that. Yeah. But teacher quality, not as many people advocating for that. So that might just quietly disappear.
But it's important to understand the consequence of that. Steve, sorry.
So I just, I keep coming back to the fact that, I think, Todd and Mark kind of mentioned, like, there isn't a lot of federal government restriction, when it comes to education. So really, if you think about the only federal government restriction right now in the context of the funds we're talking about is saying these funds we're getting from the federal government have to go to your most vulnerable populations. So if they're really saying we're gonna give the freedom back to states, essentially what they're saying is we're gonna make it so you don't have to give that money to your vulnerable populations, right? Which is, like you said, now it's gonna be used for vouchers or whatever, right? And then that way that rolls in there is, you sit there and you say, an IEP, 504s, like those are legal plans that we develop, in response to federal legislation, right, to be compliant with those. And those obligations, whether they're legal or just our moral obligations to those populations, don't go away if that funding goes away, right? And then kind of to Mark's point, at the end of the day, I've got to come up with a budget and I've got to get buses rolling, I've got to get kids to school. And that means if I have an IEP that says this kid has like a one-to-one support aid, I can't get that, that position's there.
Yeah.
So now that means, there's no sports, there's no clubs, there's no AP classes that only have, because in a small school I only have 12 kids in there, I can't afford to run a class with 12 kids, right? Like, so it's like, that's the stuff that's gonna go to kind of like meet those basic needs. And then if you do that, you're gonna get a self-fulfilling prophecy of now you're gonna get the kids who have the means are gonna leave public school.
Right. No, that was a great distillation of the ripple effect. I appreciate that. Thank you. You want to say something?
I got to get in front of Steve, man. Seriously, like he's looking at my notes.
I'm sorry, we're never assigning seats again. That's like the big learning here.
I find it ironic, Lori, that this is the 50th anniversary of PL 94142, which is the special education law where free and appropriate public education was established.
I didn't know that.
And that law ultimately is what charged the conversation that formed the Department of Education in 1973.
Yeah.
And so here we are going backwards in time to take that out of really our families, because we got to talk, when we're talking about special education, this is hard. This is hard on families at their dinner table and in their living rooms.
Yeah.
Because everybody, when they have their child, wants their child to go through the educational system as smoothly as they possibly can. And when something is in the way for somebody that needs that specialized education, we are ethically and morally responsible to provide that to them. So to undercut the very institutions that provide that opportunity is a moral and ethical failing that we have to fight for. And to Steve's point, as we look at building our budgets for the school system, we've got to fund our mandates. And when we start with our mandates, what comes next is what's not mandated. So class sizes are not mandated. Classes are. Class sizes aren't. But all the support systems that are necessary in an ever more complex educational setting today than we've ever had before. With AI in our environments, handhelds, all the complexities that come with those things are all impact.
Yeah.
So it's a very complex formula, and it really comes down to the moral and ethical core values of our leaders to ensure that we're getting what we need for children in our schools.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think you all know I'm a product of public schools. I am, obviously, I got a scholarship to go, to college, and I was very lucky in that regard. But I did use Pell Grants for some of the gaps that, and we did qualify for financial aid. So, the package was a portfolio of, programs that are now under fire. My kids go to public schools. I just signed my daughter's 504 plan like 3 months ago. I know intimately well her classroom, the size, the supports that are in her classroom that she benefits from. And so on a very personal level, I can't fathom, these cuts. Because if anything, I look at, your teacher population, which is a great point on the teacher quality grants, like we actually need to be investing in our teachers more. We need to be attracting more people to the profession. We really need across the board to make it easier for people to teach in our classrooms and train the next generation, but we also need to make it, much easier for our young people to access more opportunities. That just goes hand in glove with a strong country, with a strong economy, with our global leadership. So this has been very helpful. Is there anything that's left? Yeah.
Yeah, I think just important to think about, we have to be clear about this. This is a bait and switch, right? So we're saying that, hey, we're going to scrap this, federal department. You're going to save all this money. The money's just being shifted now to state and to local municipalities, right? So there's no savings. We just now actually have a greater burden. And I think it's really, you ask us, what's going to happen if we get rid of special ed in 504? So when I used to work at the State House in Massachusetts, it only took you about one day there to realize you got to follow the money to understand politics, right? And so you kind of look at this and you say, okay, well, what's behind this? We mentioned vouchers. Well, who does that really work for? Maybe that small percentage of folks who send their kids to independent schools or private schools, parochial schools. But over 95% of the kids in the United States go to public schools. So the vast majority of folks, this won't even make sense because this isn't in their decision-making process, right? Nor are we tooled with all the private schools to even handle all these vouchers, right? So there's no mechanism to even accept this stuff. So then when we talk about 504s and IEPs, if we can't appropriately staff and meet the needs of our kids, then what we're forced to do is send them to outplacements, right? To private schools. The cost of that is staggering. Anywhere from $50,000 to maybe $500,000 a year for the residential program. Many of these schools today are being bundled up by private equity groups. So that's where the money is going, right? And the other side of this is those kids, if they don't get those services, they're going to drop out. And so there's an increase in crime. Again, in many states, our prisons are also being bundled up and bought by private equity groups. So, I think we have to be really clear around what's happening right now in our country, where this is going. This is by design to, destabilize the schools, and they want to see the system collapse. It's almost like they're dancing with arsonist glee as they watch the thing burn. But I think we have to be really clear around the impacts of this are going to be profound. And again, communities are already struggling now to have to, pay for more outplacements. It's a killer. And
I did a town meeting last night in Methuen, so a different part of the district, but we had hundreds of people there, and I used to sit on the Education and Labor Committee. I now sit on Energy and Commerce, which oversees our programs like Medicaid, which there's now a document that says $880 billion. We don't know the details of that, but $880 billion basically decimates a program that our children, again, and many of our children, all of our children with disabilities relies on. And so, in terms of the broader context, these cuts are for a reason. And we know because they're kind of coupling these cuts with their tax package, right? So we know, I think it is incumbent on folks like me, and to the extent you all, get asked to, it's taking programs away from the people who need it the most, and giving it to people who need it the least. And that is actually what is most alarming, I think, about the series of bills that are going to come before us. So making that case to the American people, just so that they know less opportunity through the means that we've always relied upon. Public education has always meant the American dream, and certainly was for so many of your students, and for myself included. To give a tax cut, to a guy like Elon Musk, who never went to public school in the United States, right? Never used our healthcare system. It's jarring.
His business, the Cayman Islands of Dubai tomorrow, to avoid any taxes anyway.
That's exactly right. But this was so helpful. First, I want to thank you all just for the partnership. It's not just this roundtable. You've all been terrific about working with my team and with myself to stress the importance of these funds today, the consequences of what would happen without them. It really does arm me with the best information, and also clear messaging for the families that I represent. So I really want to thank you for that. I couldn't have imagined that the timing would literally be the morning after the EO was, but we were thinking, we would just get ahead of this by having these conversations, and lo and behold, has been sort of the playbook of this sort of first chaotic first 8 weeks. We're in it. So really want to thank you for everything you're doing for our students, for our families, for our communities, and then certainly for me, as I go and fight to keep not only the Department of Education intact, but to strengthen it so that we can do even a better job for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.